Got it.
Rabbi, we've been waiting for you with bated breath. We are ready to go.
Wonderful. This time I'm already situated in the yeshiva, so I don't have to struggle in and out of the cab. Baruch Hashem, a good driver. So today's topic is how to be a good friend. Now, I want to start with two observations. One is obvious and one is not so obvious. And then I want to start to talk in general about friendship. Let's say it's going down there. Let's say it's 1:30 a.m. I get a frantic knock on the door. My friend is standing there and he says to me, I need a bottle of gin. I need it now. Okay, he's my friend. I know he has a problem. He has an alcohol problem. Should I, as a friend, give him what he wants? There's a strong reason to say no, because what he wants isn't good for him. If I really care about him, then what I ought to do is what's good for him, whether he wants it or not. So to be a good friend means to want the best for your friend, to want the best for his life, and to make your evaluation on that basis. Now, here's a second observation. You probably have all had the experience of seeing someone do something and thinking to yourself, if only he knew how bad he looks when he does that, he would never do it. He's really shooting himself in the foot. And it's very sad. And you're probably right. If he knew how he looks doing that, he would never do it. So I want to ask, why doesn't he know? Why doesn't he know? Oh, you say because no one told him. Okay, I hear that. No one told him. Why did no one tell him? Doesn't he have any friends? Well, yeah, he might have friends. Well, if they're really friends, why didn't they tell him? The answer is that a lot of the relationships that we call friendships are based on mutual flattery. I'll tell you you're good and you'll feel good. You'll tell me I feel good. I feel good. We flatter each other and that's how we get along. That's like giving him the bottle of gin. That's not good for him. If he's really being self-destructive, if he's shooting himself in the foot, the best thing you could do for him is to tell him. If we don't tell each other when we see that we're hurting, the other person hurting themselves, we have to ask ourselves whether we are really friends or what kind of friendship we have, to what extent it goes, to what extent we mean it. Now, I want to start by making a distinction between two types of friendships, both of which are real and both of which are genuine and valuable, but I'm only talking about one of them. Most friendships are based on sharing certain activities together in a pleasant way. You could have bowling friends and political discussion friends and tramping through the forest friends, and a person who's an asset on one activity might not be an asset on the other activity. And so when you go from activity to activity, have certain people whom you include because it's nice to share that activity with that person. If you change your behaviors, you change your preferences for your activities, then your set of friends will generally shift. Your political activity friends will probably be left behind if you decide to spend 6 hours a day meditating. You won't have time for political discussions. So then you just won't see them anymore. On the other hand, other people who like to meditate may join you and share it with you. So you'll have a different set of friends. Different activities, you have different friendships, and this is fine. It's positive. It's good. I don't mean to put it down. But it stands in contrast to a kind of personal connection. Chaver in Hebrew means linked to, connected to. Now, our case is where you become connected to another person and you want to share your lives to what extent that's possible. And if the activities change drastically, still, one decides to go to India and join an ashram, but you want to speak to him once a week and find out, how's the ashram? How's it doing? How are you doing? How are you relating to it? Are you happy? You're not happy because you care about him as a person. This transcends just shared activities. It's a real personal bond. Now, in the first type of friendship, there's a limit usually to how deep you get or how intimate you get. Some questions you don't ask. If you have a shared macrobiotic cooking activity, that doesn't mean you ask the other person about his family and his health and so forth and so on. You may keep the conversation non-controversial because it's just fun to cook together. But when you have this kind of really connected relationship, where it's not based just on shared activities, then there's an opportunity to put into practice what we said at the beginning. Think to yourself, where is this person in life? What is this person doing? What challenges is the person facing? And what would really be good for this person? One of the things that will be good for the person is to be told, yes, in a kind, caring, tactful, non-aggressive, non-accusatory way, to confront, not even be told necessarily, but to be asked, to confront the behavior which is costing him and hurting his situation in life. One way to initiate this is by inviting the person to put you on the receiving end. One year, from a person I know very well was Elul, and he said to me, you know me well, we've been learning together for years. Please tell me what weaknesses you see in me, what deficiencies you see in me. I'm trying to prepare myself for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, prepare myself to do tshuva. And if you see anything in me that needs attention, please tell me. You'll be doing me a favor if you will tell me. That's true. And if you have a relationship with someone that's close and committed, but you don't have this particular sharing of the activities you see the other person doing that could be improved, this is one way to initiate it, by putting yourself on the receiving end. People in relationships usually have a kind of score. They keep score of a kind of parity. You don't want to be taking too much because you want to be an equal participant in the relationship. So if you ask the other person to share with you the things that person sees you need, things that need to be corrected or improved, very likely in a short period of time, the other person will ask you to do the same for them, because otherwise it becomes a one-sided relationship. And if that means if you see someone else who is doing something that's self-injurious and you want to share it with him and you're afraid of broaching the topic, one way to start is by asking him for his opinion about you. And it should be understood that this is a real request for help. This is not just a ploy, because if he shares with you the deficiencies that he sees in you, you will definitely benefit from that. I don't know if you've heard Rabbi Hillel Goldberg, but he wrote some very important books. One was an account of the Mussar yeshivas in Europe, I'd say 150 years ago. In some of them, they had the following practice. They were divided up into groups of 8. They met together once a week. Each week, 7 would write out their observations of the 8th student and hand it to him written. Now, maybe they didn't sign the names, so he got 7 pieces of paper. Who knows which one comes from which boy? But he got, once every 2 months, an honest feedback from someone, for 7 people who care about him and want his life to be better, and therefore sharing with him their observations of things that could be improved. So building this kind of relationship is a very, very valuable thing to do for both people in the relationship. Now, I don't know if you have heard this, but I heard it a number of times about spouses who say, I want you to know that my spouse, my husband, my wife, is also my best friend. That's very precious. That's very precious. And the fact that two people love one another, even passionately love one another, does not necessarily mean that they are functioning on the level of complete friendship. And one test of it is this. You love the other person, you want the best for the other person. Do you feel comfortable saying to the other person, here is something which is hurting you. I love you, and I want the best for you. And here's something that's hurting you. Or ask, I notice that you do X. Don't express it as a judgment. Say, I notice that you do X. What does it mean for you to do X? What is it? What's its purpose when you do X? What does it provide for you that you do X? I see that you're doing it. I would like to understand you, what role this plays in your life. That it may be enough to get the person to stop to think, yeah, why am I doing it? Should I be doing it? That may by itself trigger a certain kind of self-critical consciousness. And if not, then you can go on to say, well, rightly or wrongly, I want to share with you how it's perceived. This is the way it looks. Then you can make a decision whether you want to look like that or you don't want to look like that. The interpersonal techniques are important, but they're not as important as the goal. The goal is to be able to share with the other person your perceptions of what the person is doing and what needs they have in order to be able to improve their lives. This is a key element in real friendship. Questions up to here? Yes.
What if you have a friendship where your friend does not want to hear it? Can you just, is it very horrible to say, well, let's move on to end the friendship? Like, how far do you have to go with a friendship?
Well, I wouldn't say how far you have to go. I'm talking about what it's good to do. Now, one suggestion that I made is ask the other person to share with you what that person sees in you. That's his first step. That's not threatening. And if the person is willing to do that, that may open up the communication in the other direction. That's one thing to do. There is another technique, which you have to know the person well to judge whether the technique will work for a particular person. But it does have a toil, especially for younger people, and that is to tell a neutral story. I have a friend, and my friend is doing X, Y, Z. Could you give me some help in figuring out how I should help that person? It's not about the one you're talking to. It's about somebody else. And the person you're talking to, first of all, self-protectively may not recognize that it's the same problem, but may recognize 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, like we said last week, don't take your success or failure from the initial response. You've planted a seed. With children, we do it with animals. This animal took the other one's food, and then the other one was very sad. This child takes his brother's food. So, it can get through that way. That way you defuse it by making it sound as if he's talking about somebody else. Another way to bring it up. But, part of it is, if I'm not going to do this, who's going to do it? We're friends. How many friends does a person have? Friends like this? 2, 3? Not a lot, usually. This person is doing something that's hurting him. He's hurting himself. If I don't do this, who's going to help him? So really, it does fall on me as a responsibility to try to help him in this regard. Feedback. We all need feedback because we often don't appreciate the consequences of what we do. Yes.
What does it say about you as a person if you don't feel strong enough that you can do this in a relationship? Does it mean that you're a very superficial person and you can't deal with a real friendship? Or what if you're just too concerned with the result? What if it doesn't, say in the example from last week, that you waited 8 years, let's say, to hear? That's a very long time in a relationship. So what if the consequences would be maybe 8 years later? Sometimes in a relationship, you can't wait that 8 years, and it's not worth the time because you're not outside. Like in that case, you aren't in contact with that person for 8 years, but you're going to be with this person on a daily basis or a weekly basis, however it is. And what if it causes this That you can't live with.
Yeah, so I think I hear the question. Now, first of all, I don't know. I would doubt there's a single answer to the question. What is it that's setting up the resistance? It'll vary from person to person. Some people don't have the self-confidence, or they feel they don't communicate well, or they've been burned by things similar in the past, and so they're afraid to go back there. I couldn't suggest one reason why people don't feel self-confident doing this. But again, I think that if you ask the other person for his, I'm using he, obviously meaning men or women, to ask him for his observations of you, that's non-challenging. That's very flattering. It means I trust you and I care about your perception. I think you're a wise person. And I think I could benefit if you share with me how I appear to you. That seems to me one way to open up the subject in general. And then from then on, it should make the other person more receptive to, and make it easier for you to also share something with the other person. If he says something to you that's critical and you thank him for it and you express gratitude for it, then on a later occasion you could say, I wanted to return the favor, which I hope, I don't know how subtle he is, but he gets the point. I'd like to return the favor and share my, whoops, what happened? I don't know. I lost the picture. Are we there? This now is the mutual sharing that I think is very important. Now, I think we have to take a step further. We started off by saying that a good friend does what's good for the friend, not necessarily what the friend wants. Now, we have to ask ourselves, well, what is really good for a person? We all think in terms of health and education and perhaps developing a psychology in a certain way, good midos, good personality traits. And although those judgments may be correct, still, we need to have some guiding picture, some guiding general understanding of what's really good for a person. Now, in order to do that, we need to understand what a person is. What are people? And here we go to the very fundamental elements of the Torah's definition of the world. A human being is a soul and a body together. Or as you could put it, an embodied soul. Now, this has to be absorbed. I remember hearing in the name of an American psychologist, frum psychologist once, that we should not say I have a soul. We should say I am a soul and I have a body. It sounded very clever, and I repeated it for about 2 years. And then I thought to myself, it's not quite right, because my body is also part of who I am. I am a body and a soul. That's what I am. And the relationship is very complex. Maybe we'll talk about it another time. But one thing's for sure, when you think about what's good for a person, you must focus on the soul. Think of this as a revelation of God in the world. We spoke about that once. This is something that God put into the world that's more God-like than any other thing that he created. That's the human soul. So you look at this person and say, this is a person with certain projects and certain hopes and certain responses and certain preferences. But where's the person going? Where does the person need to get to? And then to try to picture the person in terms of being a soul, and ask yourself, where could that soul go? What could that soul accomplish? And sometimes the answer is something very different from what that person's conscious of. And it may take time and gentle development until the person comes to realize it. But you as a friend should try to picture where the person should be going. So then you could try to draw a line from where he is to where he should be going. There's a fellow that became religious, and I came to know him, and he was studying ophthalmology. And he became an ophthalmologist, and he got married and a couple of children. He called me up and he said, Rabbi, I have a terrible confession to make. Uh-oh, I think to myself, what is he doing? Running guns to the Palestinians? He said, no, listen, my goal in life 5 years ago was to win the Nobel Prize in medicine. But I got married and I have a couple of children, and I realized that if I don't study more Torah, I won't be a good father to those children. I'm trying to raise a Torah family. So I've given up my goal to win the Nobel Prize in medicine. I hope you don't feel badly about me. And so you can imagine what I said. No, I don't feel badly about you. I feel wonderful about you. First responsibility is to your wife and to your children and to their Jewish upbringing. And the other things, if Baruch Hu wants you to accomplish them, like Professor Alman, who raised a wonderful family, is a wonderful person, and won the Nobel Prize. And if he doesn't, he doesn't. That's not part of your goal in the world, your life's progress in the world. But it takes time to achieve that. So the first thing you have to ask yourself is, what kinds of possibilities are open for this person, where there'll be maximum development of the soul, and then, as best you can, to nudge the person along in that path. Now, judging what's best for a person in terms of his soul is not easy. It's not obvious. And here's something which you could discuss with others. In particular, you could discuss it with someone who has some rabbinic knowledge. You can outline to the rabbi, here, these and these are his abilities and his talents. These are his obstacles. These are his shortcomings. In what direction do you think it would be best for him to develop? Maybe he will never ask that for himself for whatever reason. But if you ask it and you get a rabbinical input into the way in which you deal with the person, you may be the key to his maximizing his real potential. Real potential with a capital R, the potential for his soul. So this is the evaluation that has to be made to start with. Now, in this also, you need to enlist other people. Instead of thinking of it as your own project, it's very important to understand that one way in which you can move the person forward is by connecting him with others. Here's an example, which I have told my Talmidim in the yeshiva over and over again, and sometimes they report that it works well. We have kids who are becoming Bali Tshuva or fresh Bali Tshuva, and they often get questions from their parents, their siblings, their friends, the neighbors about what they're doing. So the feeling of the student is, boy, I better prepare myself. I better read up because I am going to be asked, and I better have good answers ready. Well, it's not a bad idea to read up and to try to have answers, but it might be much more beneficial to connect that person with a source of information, in particular, with someone who has a reputation and training in information and in communication, then you're giving the answer yourself. And you say, listen, it's a good question. I know something about it. I'm not an expert about it. And since I'm not an expert about it, I will give you a website. I give you a telephone number. Here's someone who can help you with the situation. And in that way, that connection may be more valuable than anything you could possibly tell the person. Although you have your share in here now. Okay, I'm moving to another office, and I'm taking you with me. Now, if the person doesn't if the person is reluctant to do what I just said, the person's reluctant to look up the website and so on and so on, then there's another way to do it. Oh, you're back on. Very nice. The other way to do it is to say to the person, I would like to explore this question with you. And because I myself don't feel as confident as I might and as knowledgeable as I might. So let's explore it together. Let's watch a certain video together, or let's read and discuss a certain piece of writing together. We could write a letter to this expert and ask him a question. Let's do it together. That would cement the relationship, and it would make the other person feel not alone, and also create a certain responsibility in the other person. You're preparing to share your time, and that being the case, the other person can get maximum benefit from it. It can be more important to connect the person with the larger world of Torah than that you should be knowledgeable and having all the answers. I think here you have to work on disconnecting your ego and really thinking about what's best to the other person. And in this regard, I want to add a footnote because it's something I thought I discovered for myself about a week ago. And I think it's very important, especially in terms of the way psychology looks at things. You love someone and you're not only committed to do for the other person, for you, it's thrilling. The fact that I can do for the other person is benefited by what I do, for me, is a tremendous thrill. It's very, very fulfilling and inspiring when you can do that for someone whom you love. Now, the question could be asked, is it because you want the best for the other person, or is it because you want to be giving to the other person? You want to be providing for the other person. You're building up your own self-image as a giver and a provider. Think of what we said last time about self-esteem. When you give and when you provide, you're building up yourself. You become powerful. You become full of resources. You become generous. You're building up your own ego. How can you tell whether what you're doing for somebody else, you're really doing it for the sake of the other person, or whether you're doing it just to build yourself up as a giver? Especially since there are those who will tell you, yeah, it's all really selfish. It's all really about yourself. You're really just trying to build yourself up. You shouldn't listen to people like that. But here's a challenge to such a person. How could you tell? There's a very easy way to tell. Here's the test. I've decided I'm going to do something for my wife. It's going to take me about a week of, not full time, but thinking about it, working on it. I'm halfway through. Working to provide her with X. And now X comes in the mail to her. She gets it without me. How do I feel? So here's the test. Do I feel, wow, what a slap in the face? I'm working to do it. I'm providing it. And I didn't get to do it. I lost this opportunity. Is that how you feel? Or you feel, she got it 3 days early. That's great. She has it now. She has it already. That's wonderful. If you're thrilled with her getting it when you didn't provide it, then when you're working to provide it, you're certainly not only doing it for yourself. You may have yourself involved as well, but you're certainly not only doing it for that. So here's what you want. You want to be able to do for the other because you care about the other, not just because you care about yourself being the provider. So now if the person in the relationship where we were talking about, if the person feels that you care about the other, not so much as a tool for your self-actualization, but for the other, for their sake, then they'll be much more likely to receive what you say when you share things that they need to improve and so forth and so on. And one way you can do that is when something good happens to the other person, share your excitement and your happiness for the other person where you had nothing to do with it. When that person sees that you share the excitement and happiness that they have, which has nothing to do with you, then they see that you're not just using them as your tool for becoming the provider, but rather you really care about their circumstances. Same thing's true when something bad happens. If you feel bad for them and you show that you feel bad for them, both sympathy and empathy, then they feel that you are connected to them in that way. And by the way, a psychologist told me a couple of months ago about children. He told me something which I wish I had heard when I was a parent. He said, the child needs two things. He needs to know that you're on his team and that you care about him. You're there for him and you're there and you care about him. If he feels that, if he feels that you're on his team, that you care about him and you feel for him, you can make all the mistakes in the book. The child will be fine and the child will love you. And if he doesn't feel that, you can give him musical instruments and you can give him summer camp experiences and you can give him money and all the rest of it. You won't have a relationship with the child, and the child very often is at risk. That's the bottom line, to feel that the caring for and the providing for the sake of the child caring about the child and providing for the child. You're on my team. You care about me. That's the bottom line in this kind of relationship with a child. I think it's the bottom line in friendship as well. So, but the other person has to hear it. The other person has to know it. So that being the case, if you share that their feelings with them when you have nothing to do with it, then the person feels that you're identifying with them for their sake, not for your own sake. So this is part of what it means to do for the other person what the other person really needs. Now, part of this is getting the person to realize what he needs. And if you have a deep relationship with the person, if you Dale Carnegie said the one subject that every person likes to talk about most is himself. If you ask people questions about themselves, they'll talk to you all day long. And you ask follow-up questions, yeah, but what did you do when you felt that? And how did other people feel about it? And so forth and so on. They love that. So if you talk to the person about himself, ask him questions, and then ask him leading questions. Gee, how did you face that crisis? And then he tells you what he did and how it was. What did you learn from it? Were you able to integrate something for your later life from that crisis that you learned? How do you apply it today? You bring the person along with leading questions. You're asking about him, but you're bringing him along a path of thought which may give him a different perspective on what he's doing today. Sometimes childhood experiences, not always, not 90% of the time, like some psychologists will tell you, not 60% of the time, but there are times when childhood experience leave a mark on a person and do affect their later development. If you happen to know that, you can start by asking about childhood and then trace it forward so as to connect the dots for the other person without saying anything. Just ask. That's a very non-challenging, non-aggressive way to draw the person along a certain malach machshava, a certain process of thought, which can be very enlightening to the person. So with these techniques, I think that you can build that kind of relationship, and that way you can help to do for the other person what the other person really needs. Questions up to here? Okay, so I want to elaborate a little bit on one of the suggestions that I gave you. Now, we're talking about giving advice. So you can say, I need advice on some question, and I'm asking you for the help. If you want to make a deeper impression and a long-term impression, what you could say is this. I'm facing something which I need to deal with. It's hard for me. I know I have to strengthen myself. This may take time for me, months maybe. I'd like to be able to confide in you and get your observations and your encouragement for what I'm doing. I have a problem with my brother-in-law. He's very aggressive to me and very dismissive. And my sister, who's married to him, is put in a conflict position, and I'm trying to deal with it. And then, let's say, every 2 or 3 weeks, you speak to this person and say, I tried this, and this had this effect, and I hope that maybe I could have done something better. You get the other person's feedback. This then becomes a constant subject of discussion. You're sharing your life with this person. We're talking about a person with whom you have a friendship. You're sharing your life. You're sharing a process. You're getting the other person's advice on a regular basis. That builds the confidence that this should be part of the relationship. And over a period of time, hopefully then the opportunity for you to share with the other person what you think the other person needs to hear will develop for itself. This is a way of creating that long-term kind of relationship. I know from my own experience where certain people who are close to me shared something with me, and when it happened, I thought to myself, now wait a second, I had this problem 3 months ago, and I realized that the other person waited 3 months. The other person chose the time when it should be shared, and chose the way it should be shared, and chose the point in our relationship when it could be shared. I thought to myself, this person really cares about me. This person really cares about me. shared the observation, which I needed to hear, but shared it in a way that would be maximally beneficial for me. If the other person is sensitive at all, when you do that, that's a tremendously cementing element in a relationship. The caring is there, and the concern is there, and the caring for the consequences is there. It's a tremendously important thing. And of course, since you're married, some of you are married. If you're married, there's somebody you see every day, and there's something which could be gently introduced into the relationship. I can tell you, it will make a gigantic difference. Make a gigantic difference in your relationship with the other person on both sides. The gratitude and the melding and the sense of participating in one another's lives is tremendously enhanced by building this kind of friendship. Okay? Now, the final thing is this. You probably know the story of the non-Jew who came to Hillel and said, I want you to teach me the whole Torah while I'm standing on one foot. So Hillel said, that which you dislike, do not do to your friend. That's the whole Torah. Everything else is commentary. Go forth and learn. And the commentators say that he was really using the verse, love your friend as yourself, and be careful. It's friend, it's not neighbor. That's not from our text. A Reya is not a neighbor. Reya is a friend. Love your friend as yourself. So now, the commentaries ask, Rashi addresses it by implication. So this is supposed to be the source of the whole Torah, right? Okay, if I have a mitzvah of chesed, doing loving kindness, and not hurting people with words, and not injuring people, and saving people from danger, I understand that that's love your neighbor, your friend as yourself. But what about keeping kosher? What about keeping Shabbos? What does that got to do with loving your friends? So Rashi has two pshatim. One of Rashi's pshatim is very, to outsiders, is a very daring pshat. Reya here, friend, means the Kodesh Baruch Hu. It means loving a Kodesh Baruch Hu as yourself. So there's a certain sense in which the idea of friendship is to understand that the creator of the universe can also be a friend. I have a former student who lives in Yerushalayim, and he's married, he's a wonderful family. He's a Breslover, and he signs his emails with the signature. Let me just. Oh, I hope I got 15 minutes. Let me try to put on. Yeah, do not disturb. Here it is. Do not disturb. Okay, it's on. Now let's bring this up. Yes. Okay. Sorry, I keep forgetting to do that. Put on do not disturb. So it means that there's a relationship of friendship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu also. So now we have to ask ourselves,
Rabbi,
what?
I'm sorry, you were talking about a Breslover chassid.
Oh yeah, so he signs his emails with, pour out your heart to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Creator, as you would to a good friend. You know that they practice his bodhidus. They go into the forest and they speak to Kadosh Baruch Hu. This is very important. You have to think of a Kadosh Baruch Hu not only as the king, and not only as the father, both of which are true, but also playing multiple roles, playing the role of a friend. And you say you can speak to Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam. Boy, was it tough today. It was very tough. So-and-so attacked me in public, and I didn't know what to do, and I felt my instincts rising, and I'm very good at defending myself. Thank you. I don't need any help. I can cut the person to pieces with my tongue. I'm very good at that. But I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be that kind of person. So I struggled, and I would say I was 70% successful. So I'm thanking you, Ribono Shalom, for the help that you gave me for the 70%. And I'm davening to you that you should be able to help me with the other 30% as well. That's what happened to me today. It's wonderful if you can pour out your heart to a Kodesh Baruch Hu the way you do to a good friend. Why is a good friend here? Because you know a friend wants the best for you. Your friend cares about you. What I said about parents to children, that applies for friends to friends. And if I speak honestly to a Kodesh Baruch Hu, it's only because I know that he wants the best for me. And it's important for me to express for myself what I want from my friendship and in my friendship and to do in the friendship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So this idea of relating in terms of friendship can be a part of your relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu as well. And in terms of getting feedback for the faults that you have, this is something to daven for. This is something to daven for. There is a Rebbeinu B'chai. You know that 3 times a year we had pilgrimage festivals. We went up to the temple in Jerusalem. And the word there that's used is yira, you should see, should be seen. Should be seen in the Azar, the courtyard of the temple. So the Gemara compares yira and yera'eh, to see and to be seen. One really deep shot is when you go to the courtyard of the temple, HaKadosh Baruch Hu enables you to see yourself as he sees you. You get a vision of yourself as you appear to the Creator. Could anything be more valuable than that? We're talking about feedback. We're talking about feedback from another human being with limited understanding, limited perspective, all sorts of biases. But because Baruch Hu would share his perception of you, and that's something you can daven for. So you can daven for it because sometimes you'll have an inspiration, and sometimes the Kodesh Baruch Hu will send you a messenger. And when he sends you a messenger, then it's your job to pay attention. Baal Shem Tov taught us that whenever something happens to you, especially something that's out of the ordinary, you should ask yourself, why did this happen? What does the Kodesh Baruch Hu want me to learn from this? Once, Baal Shem Tov saw someone violating Shabbos. So when we're not on his level to figure these things out the way he did, but I'll give you that as an example. So he thought, why did the Kodesh Baruch Hu put in my way an example of someone violating Shabbos? So he analyzed his own past, and he came up with the fact that years ago, he was present when a certain Torah scholar was attacked. Now, the Gemara says that the Torah scholar is a representation of Shabbos in the world. And this Torah scholar was attacked, and the Baal Shem Tov didn't defend him, or didn't defend him adequately. Baal Shem Tov said, aha, now I understand why I saw this violation of Shabbos, to remind me of that event where I failed, so that I can correct it. So that's very sophisticated and nuanced to figure out what you did years before and so on and so on. Well, the Kodesh Baruch Hu is not going to send me a message like that. He won't expect me to go back years and figure it out. But I could ask myself, what's going on now? What's happening in my life now to which this particular interaction could be relevant? Now, for example, suppose somebody criticizes me for something that I didn't do. So in my defensive reaction, I say, well, what a dope. That's not even true. But if I'm more self-introspective and I'm a little bit less defensive, I say to myself, okay, I didn't do it. But why did it happen? Maybe, although I didn't do that, I'm doing something else. Maybe it's similar. Or maybe I provoked his anger. And that's what I should analyze from the interaction. So instead of responding defensively and freeing myself from responsibility, I should ask, what is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching me about myself so that I can benefit from it? I know, for example, my first wife, when she was counseling people who were going through shidduchim, and a shidduch would be broken, and often it would hurt the person who Was well, the other side broke it, so this person is hurt, and this justification, everything else. And she would ask, "What did you learn? How are you going to change when you go into the next shidduch? Nothing. Then it was wasted in you. The fact that you feel the other person was not justified, so what? What did you learn about yourself? Did you anticipate they would break it? No. Then what's the failure in your perception? Why didn't you anticipate it? Didn't you see it was going wrong? If you become less defensive and more self-analytical, you can learn a great deal from events that take place like that. Now, if you daven to Kodesh Baruch Hu to reveal to yourself things that need to be fixed, 9 times out of 10, he'll do it. The openness to receive instruction, you make yourself into a vessel that can receive what he wants to give, then that's a very important precondition for his giving it. So you have to mean it, you have to know it, you have to mean it, and then you have to be attentive to when he sends you the message. Very often, Kodesh Baruch Hu sends you a message, when he sends it in a way that requires your response. It doesn't overpower you, it doesn't overwhelm you. I don't know if I've told you this story, but this story is very, I don't think I have. It's very important to make this message get across, and also in general to see how Kodesh Baruch Hu runs the world. There is a fellow today, who's alive today, who's in Kiruv, reasonably well known. He comes from a family in London, a Sephardi family, which was not particularly religious, though of course, because they're Sephardi, they have many advantages. They believe, and they know there's a tradition. They just don't keep all of the tradition. And he had a terrible problem as a child. When he had 2 older sisters. Now, I'm sure you can't imagine that as a problem, but in this case, it was a problem. And one day when he was like 7 or 8 years old, the sisters made his life difficult for him. He went up to his room, he was crying, and he said, God, because of course they believe, he said, God, my life is terrible, and I know what I need to make my life into a good life. I need a baby brother. So I'm asking you, please give me a baby brother. And then he said, if you give me a baby brother, I promise you I will study and find out what it is you want us to do, because I know we do some things, but not a lot of other things. And I will try to live the way that you want Jews to live. And then he said, of course, my mother could have a baby boy just by accident. So I'll know that it's coming from you. Please let him be born on my birthday. Not bad for an 8-year-old. So sometime later, a baby brother was born about a week off his birthday. Okay, here's the parting of the roads. He could have said, you're God, you're all powerful, you're all knowing, everything under your control. If it's a week off, it's nothing. It's a mistake, it's an accident, forget it. I didn't get my signal. He didn't say that. He said, very good, a week off is close enough. I got it, I hear the signal, and he took it. Okay, when he came to be 12 years old, prepare for his bar mitzvah, he said to his father, I want to go to a real rabbi who will prepare me for bar mitzvah in the traditional way. So he sent him to a rabbi in Golders Green, who was preparing him. And after a month, the rabbi says to him, you don't come from our circle. You're not part of our community. The people that your family is a family of people with a different approach to Judaism. Why did you come to me to prepare you for your bar mitzvah? So the boy told him the whole story. Next week he came back and the rabbi said, guess what? You think your brother was born a week off your birthday because you used the English calendar. They look at the Hebrew calendar, he was born exactly on your birthday. Would surprise you that fellow grew up to be from? But look, if he had been makpid on the week and said it was off by a week and never taken it, he never would have found out that he was born on his birthday. This is the way Kodesh Baruch Hu runs. He offers you a hand, but you have to take it. He's not going to overwhelm you with it. I'm not talking universally, but often, he gives you an opportunity, and you have to take it. So here, this boy took the opportunity, and he discovered that it was a real miracle. It really was born exactly on his birthday. If you look back on your own lives, I think you will see places where there were decisions to make, and you made a decision, and others, many of your contemporaries, did not make the decision, and that puts you in a certain position which they're not in. I think you could say that about this morning's shir. You're sitting here in rage on a Sunday morning, And a lot of your other friends and acquaintances are not sitting enraged on a Sunday morning. You had the opportunity, you took the opportunity, and that is making and will make a big difference in the way that you grow and develop, make a big difference in your life. This is the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu usually operates the world. So when you daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, please share with me the input that I need to be able to appreciate myself better, where I'm going and the impact that I'm having on other people, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give it to you. And if he gives it to you, you'll be able to apply it to yourself and then apply that experience to others as well. Okay, last 5 minutes. Questions? Okay, so then I'll just, yeah.
Can you hear me, Rabbi? Rabbi, can you hear me?
Yes, I do hear you. I do hear you.
Okay, sorry for that. How does this differ from a
Got cut off. Oh, I got cut off.
That's okay. Rabbi, is this okay?
Yeah, now I hear you.
How does this differ from the relationship with a rabbi, with a rav?
I don't think that it has to differ. I don't think there has to be only one source for feedback. I think you have several friends who can give you feedback. Each one will have his own point of view, his own limitations. I think it's wonderful that you can get multiple feedback. I don't see why it would have to. And since you asked that, you have to separate between here's what I observe is one thing. Here's the effect it's having on other people, which is another thing. And thirdly, what I think you should do. Each one is separately valuable. And the third one could have multiple answers. This is a general topic, but it's important to know. If you go to someone for advice on how to develop, different people can give different advice. It's not that one's right and one's wrong. There are different paths to development. Each one will develop you in some ideal way, some maximal way, and all the paths could be correct. It's just you can't follow all of them at one time. So one mustn't think of this as a difference in methodology or a difference in psychological theories, so on and so on. Same thing is true with sports. There's no one ideal way for a competitor to develop. There are different structures, different paths, and each one can develop his talents in a different style, but maximally. So here, if the first thing you want is feedback as to how it looks. Second of all, you want feedback as to how people are responding to it, what their reaction is to what you're doing. And the third is advice to how to develop in such a way as to improve the impact. And the third, you could get multiple advice and you could mix and match, or you could take one and not apply the others. That's much less bound than the first two. Okay, gang, wonderful to talk to you as always. And Kadosh Baruch Hu should help you continue your studies and sharing with each other and sharing with your spouses especially, and to support your children. And we should all be able to celebrate wonderful, wonderful occasions together.